I went out and sought out these connections, and I'm like willing to be wrong, and I'm willing to learn and, you know, like get to know people, and then they're human beings, you know, and like we have a lot of things in common, more so I think than things that divide us, you know.
No,
well, I think also we can celebrate the diversity, you know, but I think it's just very beautiful when we come from this place of like love and connection.
Welcome back to, well, I guess welcome to She Comes With Baggage, because it's the first time, but I feel like we've talked about all these things before, you and I, so it feels like we've done this before.
Right.
But it's okay, it's official now.
It's official.
It's official. Oh, I'm so happy you're here right now. Tell me about your background. I know you're from the Netherlands. Tell me about you. What was young Maartje like?
Well, I was born in the south of the Netherlands, only lived there for 5 years. Then I moved a little bit more up north, like an hour north of Amsterdam. Okay. That doesn't sound like very far, but
I think it's like 30 minutes.
Tiny, I am one of 4 kids. I'm the oldest. My parents divorced when I was like 13. So I guess that was a little bit like of me growing up, like full house and then like 2 houses.
Right.
And then when I was 17, I moved to Amsterdam, and that's been my home base since. I've traveled a lot as well. So I've been nomadic too. But yeah, little Maartje, I think she was a little bit troubled, to be honest. Yeah. I do feel like, there
troubled or trouble or both?
Both.
Both.
No, I think trouble at home, like perfect, like good girl on the outside, you know, which was probably like cause of the trouble at home,
right,
you know?
That makes sense.
I feel like from a very young age, I learned how to mask, how to like put on this role of like, you know, this is what society wants from me. And then at home, I would just like have so many, like all the anger came out, like the frustration with it, like knowing already that I didn't fit in. Yeah, some people are like, oh, I wish I could go back to my childhood. I'm like, nah, I'm good.
I'm good. I'm happy where I'm at now. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, were you always a creative child? Like, I mean, you're so creative in so many different ways, which is definitely something we'll talk about. But is that something that was always a part of your childhood or growing up? That
Yeah, I think so. Like we always had kind of like that kind of crazy hours where people would love to come by because we had all the stuff, you know, like all the craftsy things. We had like, I used to want to go join a circus. So, you know, like I know how to ride a unicycle. Like we had all kind of that kind of stuff. You know, we had like, you know, clothes to dress up. Like it was just,
Can you still ride a unicycle now?
Yes, I can.
Oh my God. You
I actually bought one like 2 years ago.
What?
Yeah.
Wait, that's amazing. And also you play piano, you do like all different things.
Right, I have a harp. My sister plays the piano.
Okay, yes. Okay, the harp, right. And I was like, that isn't... Also, how do you fit a harp anywhere? Like, I could imagine getting that into your living space is also difficult. I could imagine just like, you know, but it's beautiful.
At some, like, it was at my mom's for a long time, but then she moved and she was just kind of like, I cannot bring it. Like, it's just, it's kind of a thing,
right,
you know?
Right. You know, I was trying to figure out where we met. That must have been... We've been following each other on social media for years and years now, right?
Yeah.
And then
we almost met in Southeast Asia.
Yes.
But then we kept missing each other, I think.
Right. And that was what, 2019?
I think
2018,
so.
2019. And then we were supposed to go on a trip together, and I'm just really bad at committing to long-term goals. So we didn't make that happen. But during COVID,
and then I thought you didn't like me, and you thought I didn't like you.
It was a whole thing. But we realized now it was just a big misunderstanding. Yes. Unless you were like, actually, no, I didn't like you.
No, I do like you.
But yes, we actually met for the first time, I guess, speaking was during a Zoom call during COVID, right?
True.
Yeah. We did a long distance Zoom call, and I think it was so much fun.
It was a lot of fun. Yeah. That was such a weird time.
It was. But then we met in Amsterdam in 2022 in person, and it's just been love ever since then, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about you are just constantly on this authentic journey of self-expression. And I feel like since I met you, even, you know, you've evolved.
You've really seen the biggest growth, I think. Yeah,
and it's beautiful to see, though. It's so inspiring because I feel like what you're doing is just really following what your heart is telling you. And I feel like not a lot of people allow themselves to do that. So that's why I was so excited to like have you here and being a part of this. And so I would love to hear about your coming out story. And, you know, I know you identify as queer. And what does that mean to you?
Yeah. When I was in high school, like I thought I was straight. Like I had this example of my straight parents, and then I had gay aunts, and I was attracted to men. So I was just kind of like, oh, this box, I will just fit myself in there.
Squeeze in.
Like this kind of fits.
Yeah.
And then when I started college, I joined a creative artistic student association, and then I met people who were like bisexual.
Okay.
And then I was just like,
whoa,
wait, what? That's an option?
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to choose?
Yeah.
I was like, oh no, I've been denying myself a whole lot.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I was just like, that kind of just makes a lot of sense because women are so pretty.
Yeah, no, honestly, it's interesting that you say that because that's how I felt when I came out. I didn't know I had an option. I thought that there was only one way to be, and that was to be with men.
Right.
I didn't even know that I could explore other
I think it's
parts
still
of myself.
something that I kind of like, in what sense am I attracted to men, or am I conditioned to be attracted to men,
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, it's such an interesting...
Right. And so when you came out, how was that like with your family? Were they pretty open? Was it more challenging?
Yeah, so like the way I came out is because I fell in love with my best friend.
Happens to the best of us.
Lesbian story. We also U-hauled and everything.
Yeah.
So we had already been friends for a year, and so at some point I just told my parents that we aren't just friends. Like, she's my girlfriend.
Right.
And yeah, I told my dad when he was like doing the dishes, like we were doing the dishes together. And he was just like, oh. I was like, wait, Dad, did you hear me? He was like, yeah. Okay. Which was kind of like an underwhelming reaction, but also kind of a good one because like it shouldn't matter, He was just like, okay, good for you, And also I guess his sister's gay, so like,
okay,
like I think he was more confused like after the breakup than like I went on a date with someone and it was like, let's say like Jeff, and he asked like, oh, what's the name of this date? I was like, Jeff. And then my dad was like, wait, what?
Right.
I thought you were gay now.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And so whenever you came out to them, was it lesbian or was it queer or what did that look like? Was it because I know labels are always changing.
Yeah.
Queer, the word queer is always changing.
Yeah. So like I had a boyfriend before of like 2 years.
Okay.
And so it really wasn't an issue that I was like a guy,
Okay.
And like I was definitely very in love. And so, yeah, I was just like, I have a girlfriend now. And I guess my mom also asked me like later on, like, oh, are you lesbian now? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I'm just very into this girl right now, woman.
Right.
And that's just it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think for me, it's always been kind of fluid. And sometimes, especially being perceived as a lesbian couple, I definitely leaned into that for a while. But I've also been like, it's no secret that I'm attracted to like all humans. I think pansexual fits more if you really want to label it because I'm into like who they are as a person.
Yeah.
And I don't care about like genitals or whatsoever. Like I don't know how that works for other people. How like if they just think about what's in their
there's
underwear
like a connection.
Or like I don't know.
It's interesting too. I mean, I think that is one of the most beautiful things about talking about sexual orientation, but also gender expression, and then how they're all still under the umbrella of being queer, right?
Yeah.
So that's why LGBTQ plus, the trans and non-binary community would be more of a gender expression than versus a sexual orientation, but we all kind of are a part of a community together. So trying to figure out what that means for everyone and
because I
how
do
it's
feel
fluid.
like it's kind of linked. Because like once I kind of like felt like comfortable with my sexuality, like all of a sudden, then I was like, I didn't question my sexuality before. Then I started questioning it, and then I was like, oh, what else can I question? Heteronormativity,
it's
like
kind of unpacking what you've been taught, and realizing society and humans have created so many rules for ourselves, which it's kind of like, who made these rules?
Right, exactly.
And realistically, why do we have to follow them?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that is one of the beautiful things about having to unlearn a lot of those things, because sometimes those rules don't apply to everyone.
No.
Sometimes they feel comfortable for some people, but then they also kind of restrict you from actually being able to get to know yourself, which is, I think, one of the beautiful things about you being like, okay, what else can I relearn about myself?
Right.
And I think something that we've talked about in the past that I really love is demisexuality. And I think for me, I definitely wanted to talk about that because I also think that I'm demisexual. And I think some people don't maybe recognize
Right.
demisexuality, and correct me if I'm wrong, isn't necessarily a sexual orientation, but more of how sexuality operates. So you can still be straight and be demisexual. You can be bisexual and be demisexual.
Right.
Basically, it means that when you're connected to someone on a deeper level, that's when you find like a sexual intimacy.
Right.
You have to be able to get there emotionally before you can get there physically. And I feel like I related to that so much with you.
Yeah.
What does it mean to you to be demisexual?
Yeah, I think for me, it definitely means like I need to feel connected with someone to be able to enjoy or like actually feel physically attracted to someone.
Right.
Like I know like my body, like our bodies can do things without there being an emotional connection. But I'm like, I've done that. And I'm like, it's just not for me. Like,
it's not necessarily fulfilling in a way sometimes.
No.
For me.
And I guess I see that for other people being true, you know, there's like, I think allosexual, I think is the other side. Where people like can be physically attracted and then, you know, enjoy that. And that's just not the case for me. And that's, I think also in my sexuality journey, when I first started dating a girl, like I didn't have that emotional connection, you know? So even when we were intimate, because I was curious about it, I was kind of like, oh, I guess maybe I'm not queer because, you know, I am not enjoying this so much. But like, I guess it wasn't about the body and, you know, that kind of stuff, like the physical part of it.
It was more
about the emotional connection missing.
Fascinating. No, I love that. And, you know, I think something we've talked about too in the past, you know, with the current political climate, it's globally, there's a lot of animosity towards the LGBTQ plus community. Why do you think, in your opinion, that no matter what, the LGBTQ plus community will never be silenced? They're not going to go anywhere. Why do you think so?
Yeah, I think especially in times of hardship, like there we find each other. Because like I see it in the Netherlands, where I think for a while we've been like on the top progressive countries in the world. Especially then, you know where to find each other. And I think the more progressive and open it comes, like also more queer spaces disappear because it's not so necessary anymore, which is also like a sad thing. And I do think like in times of hardship, those places appear again, you know, and like not always visibly and openly, but like definitely underground. There's like queer people are everywhere. Like they've always been there, and, you know, we will not go anywhere.
But also the Netherlands is, like you said, same thing with other milestones for the LGBTQI+.
Yeah, I think we were among one of the first to allow people with access in their passport. Yeah. But, you know, there's still like so much to be wished for, you know, and like there's other people, other places like Malta, for example, who's just been, you know, like they were, I guess, behind on like a lot of the rights before. And then they just, I don't know, sped everything up and like now they're ahead of the game. You know?
I love that. Yeah. They're just like, we're all human. Can we stop, you know, villainizing people just based on who they love or who they
and they're just like, this is the right thing to do. Like, this is just,
No, and I love that. If somebody was to be maybe questioning their sexual orientation, what would be a piece of advice that you would give to them?
Well, looking back for me, I think I wish I would have taken a little bit more time for me with the process. I guess I was very excited about like exploring, and I was just like, I'm just an open book. I just like overshare with everyone. And like I was like, oh, now I'm dating a girl. And like I guess before I even had like fully taken my time to realize what that meant to me, I was already like open about it. And then I think I already got questions that I was like, oh, I don't know these answers. So that said, I think some people, I think, wait a very long time, and then it also builds up to be this whole thing that you don't even know when you're going to do it. I just allow yourself time and grace. And especially, like recently I met some, I guess, like baby queers who are like, oh, I don't know if I'm queer enough. And I'm like, baby, you are. Like, you're so valid. And like, you know, other people are like, oh, I don't have like experience with, you know, like same-sex relationships or whatever. I'm like, that doesn't matter, you know, like you're queer if you feel queer, and like whatever that means to you, and that's totally valid. And I think just allow yourself that time and grace, and like explore, or, you know, like do it in your own time. Because I think, again, it can also feel like, you know, oh, it should look like this, or like, you know, like, especially when you see examples. But it's like everyone is on their own timeline.
With older generations, boomers, the silent generation, a lot of times when they did the studies on them, around 4% of people would identify as LGBTQ+, right? And then the millennial generation came through, and we were like, nah, like I'm coming through with this. And I think it was something like 12 to 13% of people identified as LGBTQ+. And then now you have Gen Z, and it's almost 27% to 30% of Gen Z now identify as LGBTQ+. And we've talked about this, and it's not like people are just suddenly becoming more queer.
No.
I think that people are starting to feel valid in their queerness. They're starting to feel okay, and they can actually express that side of themselves, which it kind of gives me hope, right? Because it's not like there's any more or less queer people. It's just that the laws have changed.
Yeah, because
there's more representation.
That's what we were talking about. Like, I don't know if the numbers like represent the actual, but like people being more out and open about it.
Right.
know? And then of course also like with the older generation, there's just a lot of queer people wiped out, because of a pandemic,
Yeah. No, I think it's fascinating. And who knows? I mean, maybe in like 100 years, we'll all be queer,
I feel like, I just hope we can all embrace a bit more fluidity, because I feel like that whole like binary and like, it's so restrictive and rigid.
Yeah.
And I think like, I'm not saying like, oh, everyone should be queer, but like, I think it would be beautiful if everyone feels the like space to explore it and not being so defined by these boxes, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's something I want to talk about next is, gender expression. And while they are different, there's a lot of overlap and a lot of nuance to it. And you identify as non-binary, gender fluid as well. And what does that mean to you? And what is, I guess, if you were to define that, what does that mean to you?
Right. I think I realized, because I do connect with, I guess, womanhood, or, like being a feminist, and like, I think when I was a teenager, I definitely felt like I was never woman enough. Like I got my period very late. I was also, I skipped the class. So like everyone was a year older than me, and I felt like so behind on, like I got boobs very late, and then I was like, oh, they're so tiny.
I still don't have any, so it's okay. I still don't have any. So.
Right, and so I felt like I was so tied to like biology, I guess, which then also later on, like I started following so many more trans and non-binary people, and I realized like, oh, that's not at all what gender is about. And then I started questioning like, oh, also that needs to feel like woman enough. I'm kind of like, wait, maybe that was already a sign that I may not be a woman,
Right.
And so just learning that there could be more. Again, it was this box that I was just desperately trying to fit in. I'm like, I can do this, but it was a little bit like, it just doesn't really fit. I don't really want to be in boxes. I think it's really amazing to like lean into that fluidity, and that there can be more,
Yeah. Well, I think, both of us met through the travel space, right? And I think when we travel, we actually, we are exposed and we are opened up to different cultures, and a lot of different cultures. There's third gender, there's two-spirited, there's multiple different places that have recognized multiple genders for decades and decades, centuries, right?
Yeah. And even like gender expression and like gender roles are so different.
So different.
So that already, like, that's what I love about travel. Like the first time I traveled, like all the norms and values that I had at home, like they looked so different there. And I was like, wait, if it can be so different, like what else can be there, Because I realized like we all accept these kind of societal norms as are normal, and like we stick with them. But then as soon as you get out of that, you're kind of like, oh, wait, there's a whole, like, and then I think that's where the power lies, because then you get to choose what feels aligned for you.
Right.
And like if that is like the norms and values that you grew up with, beautiful.
Right.
But like then it's a choice instead of like a put on, like, this is the only thing. Yes.
And then, I mean, we'll talk about mental health as well later, but I feel like when you're forcing yourself to fit a label or a mold or a societal norm or a gender norm, it automatically creates this, a suppression of yourself, right? Your mental health is affected, then your emotional health is affected. You can't communicate as effectively with your partners or your friends because now you're trying to be someone or masking, like you said earlier, that and being a person that you don't necessarily align with. I think a lot of times queer people do that because they've been told for so long that who they are isn't enough or who they are isn't valid. Yeah. So a lot of times we've grown up with this masked version of ourselves. Yeah. But then whenever we are accepted, we're like, here I am, and here's all of me, and it feels good. So
I do also feel like stepping more into my authenticity and like who I am, and like it feels more like peeling back layers and like unlearning than actually learning, like it's not like I put on more, it's kind of like I let go of a lot that I had put on.
I would imagine that's very liberating.
It is.
It's very freeing, right? Which is,
and like people
beautiful.
have told me, you know, like I see it in you, like I just like, and that's what I feel that I see in like my trans siblings, you know, like all around the world, like I just see them glow up. They get, and that's I think where the power lies, and that's may also be what's like kind of threatening to other people, because they don't dare to step in that, you know, place where they're just very free and very liberated.
No, it's very true. And I've had the pleasure of watching you grow and join that same movement of seeing you blossom. Like you've really, I just feel like I see such a beautiful glow of you, and it's just I'm honored to be a part of that journey, even from a distance. And I mean, honestly, even when you recorded videos of you shaving your head for the first time and sharing that and what that meant for you, I think that authenticity and that storytelling is so beautiful because it resonates with so many people around the world. I would love to learn about, how do you find the balance between masculinity and femininity? And what does that mean for you too?
Yeah, I think that's such an interesting thing to play with. I think I used to try to fit into this whole, like, I guess, feminine, like recently my mom even told me like, oh, but you were such a girly girl growing up. But then I was like, I also love to climb trees and everything, you know, I don't know if it was like, but I did like ballet, you know, and I did like, you know, drawing and the more like girly things or whatever. But yeah, I think it's just such a fun thing to play with. And I like to provoke some thoughts in people, you know. I'm like, I love when they look at me and then they're just kind of like, wait, like even like just now, like on a train, like yesterday on the train, like there was this little kid looking at me like, like, what are you, you know? And then also like took his head off and then also had a buzz cut. I don't know if that was like a sign that I was like, kind of like, oh, there's something similar about us, but also like, you're different.
But also maybe they took their hat off to show you that maybe they're relating to you in a certain degree, or maybe they think you're really cool, which is, I love that. Kids are really good about just showing their true selves. Even sometimes it's a little harsh. I'm like, you could have kept that inside. But that sounds like such a genuine experience, right? And something that you'll probably take with you forever and like look back on that moment, which is really cool. I think even for me, you know, my journey has been very different, but also very the same. I think growing up, I was told you have to look this way, you have to dress this way. If you don't, you're not going to find a boyfriend. I'm like, I'm 11. Can you leave me alone? I don't want a boyfriend. I want to play outside and play football, you know? And it took me a long time to understand what I felt comfortable in. And I'm still figuring that out. Even shopping used to give me terrible anxiety because I was like, I didn't fit in the women's section and I didn't fit in the men's section because I loved men's clothes, but they didn't fit me because I'm little and like short and like they were always so oversized. But it's interesting now how I think fashion even is becoming more fluid, which is really nice. So I'm watching men wear pearl necklaces and crop tops and I'm like, ooh, maybe I can wear crop tops and pearl necklaces and still feel valid in my masculinity, which is interesting. And I feel like it's kind of cool how
I also went through a whole phase where I was like, pink cannot be my favorite color. That's too affirming of like all the gender stuff, you know? But now I'm like, I do love pink, you know? I'll just and also it's kind of funny because historically like pink was like a man's color because it came from red. It was like powerful, you know? And blue was soft and like girly. And then at some point like the clothing industry was like, we need to switch it up. And like it was a whole marketing thing. So I don't know. I think it's just so interesting. I do like to dress up and like wear dresses and stuff and, you know, but then it felt like I was too much what I guess society expects of me, you know? So I do feel like as soon as I got my hair off and there's this little bit of like, oh, that's not, you know, like, oh, women should have long hair or whatever, you know? That's when I feel very liberated to like experiment a bit more, you know, like also with more makeup and stuff. So I feel like there's always this little, you know, mix of things. I do remember like first time cutting my hair off, not the first time, but like the second time I got my hair off. I've done like a couple times. And then still having like some more baggy clothes and stuff, but then also being perceived as a man. And like, I was definitely like, oh no, I'm not tough enough to be a guy in this world.
You're like, if there's a bug, I'm not getting it.
Oh no, bugs I will get.
No, okay, well, I'm calling you because I'm not getting the bug. That's funny.
No, I'm cool with that. But yeah, no, I'm like, I'm not tough enough. Like, I'm such a softie. I'm so sensitive.
It's funny because even for me, like I got I mean, I didn't only get tattoos. I really enjoy tattoos. But part of my journey was I think I'll be perceived more masculine if I shave my head and get tattoos. I'll be more affirmed in my sexual orientation, more my masculinity if I look this way.
Right.
And I've had my hair cut for like 9 years. It's not going anywhere. I'm probably going to be like 90 years old with my head shaved. But it's fun because now I can play with growing it out, wearing my hair long. I can curl it. I can color it if I wanted to, and I still feel like there's a validity there, and I can still play with that and then wear men's clothing. Like, this is from the men's department. I'm like, yes, I'm into it. But it's fun. It's fun to kind of see what feels right, and every day is different, I would imagine, for you as well. Some days you want to express yourself differently. Androgyny is a word that we used to hear a lot more. Is that something that you think is parallel to non-binary, or is it totally different?
I think it's often kind of assumed that, when you're non-binary, like, you should look androgynous. But I mean, there's no one way to look like non-binary, because, non-binary is like from within, it's a gender identity. It's from the inside. And I think androgyny is more like the expression, like how people perceive you. And I do feel more comfortable, because there have definitely been times where I'm like, I look too femme to be non-binary. Like, if I say I'm non-binary, people don't believe me.
But which is also something you have to unlearn, right? Because that's conditioned.
Exactly. Yeah. That's also what I was thinking when you just mentioned, like, this whole journey of, like, looking more queer or whatever, like being more affirmed to your sexuality. I do think people need to go through those stages to finally get to, like, a comfort level, because, like, I do feel like in the beginning I was also like, I feel like I need to prove myself and like, get that pixie cut, classic lesbian haircut.
And a stamp of a rainbow on my forehead.
And also tattoos. And also just, I think it looks hot. But, there's definitely that kind of feeling. And then at some point I do feel like, I'm more comfortable with me. And then it also matters less how you're perceived, because it's like, I'm validated in myself, you know, and the people around me, like, see me how, I feel like I want to be seen, and then again, very powerful, because then other people cannot take that away from you.
That's true. It's an energy that you radiate. And I think that's also what you mentioned this before. That is what is the intimidation, I think, or to one degree of the intimidation of why people want to suppress that out of our community so bad. Because we are showing up truly authentically, regardless of the rules that have been set before us.
And then people can have less power over you.
Yeah, that's true. Ooh, period. I want to talk about pronouns, because this is something, and I don't know if this is a cultural difference, but in the US, it's a huge topic right now. Pronouns have been weaponized in a way, when realistically it's just a way that we are expressing ourselves truly to how we feel. And like you said, how you feel on the inside as well. What did pronouns mean to you, and how did you come about finding your evolution of pronouns? Because you use they, she, right?
Yes.
Okay, yes.
Yeah. So for a long time I went by she, her, because I guess I didn't really feel uncomfortable with it. And I guess in my mind it was kind of like, you can only use other pronouns if you're like uncomfortable with the ones that you have. And I did realize that when I sometimes was perceived, when I was wearing baggy clothes and short hair, and like all of a sudden it was like sir and like she, he, him, and I was kind of like, that doesn't feel right. That doesn't feel fitting for me, But then, like, I started getting more non-binary friends who used they, them, and then I also kind of like realized, I kind of like that. Like, that feels just as fitting as she, her.
Okay.
And so then I started going by she, they. And then now I'm also kind of at a point where I'm kind of like, maybe I prefer the they, them.
Okay. Yeah.
Also because I think it's also kind of like an activist thing. Like, I want people to practice more with pronouns.
Right.
So it's not like a she, they. Sometimes people feel like, it's an option. I'll just stick with a she, her.
Because it feels more comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm like, no, I like a mix, because they both feel very fitting to me, And I can see myself getting to a point where he, him could also be cool, because I'm like, it's all fluid. It doesn't matter anyways,
Right.
And I kind of like the gender fuckery about it. Like, let make people think,
Yeah, of course.
And not assume,
Yeah.
Even like recently was my birthday, and like my sister and my dad sang like happy birthday song in Dutch, and then they finally used like they, them pronouns like in Dutch for me during the song, and I was like, it was my first time hearing my dad use those pronouns for me, because I guess I haven't really specifically come out to my family with like new pronouns, because I don't know, the whole coming out, like you keep coming out, you know, but like I put it everywhere, and like I've definitely like sneakily like, what do you think about this text, and then it ends like with my pronouns and stuff, so like I'm like, I've made them aware of it in certain ways,
and they noticed clearly, right? They noticed, and they went, that was, I mean, I would imagine it was a milestone for them, right?
Well, my mom is still in the process of like, I will never, like, I also had a partner who was like assigned male at birth, but like non-binary. And then my mom was also like, I will never say they, them about a man. I'm like, not a man.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. And it's almost interesting how that feels more of a projection. And I can't speak for your mother, but I feel like it almost feels like such a projection when someone feels so defensive when it comes to that.
I think it's also like, you know, it's new, it's different, it's it's unfamiliar. It requires you to think about things and change your thinking and like, I mean, expand your view on gender, which is also threatening, because that's also how you've made sense of the world, you know. So like you know, it's a different generation, and like she's living in a very different environment where this is just not really a topic, or like it is a topic but in the other kind of direction, and so I understand, because again, it's threatening, because like, oh, if you can question all these things, what else can you question? You know?
I love that. I mean, I feel like it's a learning curve for everyone, even for myself. I feel like part of me being part of the community is, like you mentioned before, I'm always wanting to humble myself. I'm always wanting to learn more, because I've been in the community and I've been out for 10 plus years, but I'm still learning every single day.
The older I get, the less I know.
And I'm making mistakes every day. I mean, the first person I actually met who was non-binary was a friend of ours in Denver, and they had a conversation. It was very easygoing, and they were like, oh, I'm going by they, them pronouns. This is what my preferred name is. And that whole night we were actually at a party setting. And so at the time it was the first time I'd been introduced to they, them pronouns. And I made a lot of mistakes that night, because their presentation was what I would perceive in my brain has been linked to she, her, right, for so long.
And it was the first time, so you just need practice, because it is, you need to kind of rewire some things in your brain.
Right, and it wasn't, and I was almost more frustrated with myself, because I was like, I want to address this. Why am I having a difficult time, right? And eventually I practiced it so often that I never messed it up again,
that's beautiful, because then you are looking inward, seeing like, hey, something in me is causing this to be a struggle. And I think that's the issue with other people who are kind of like, oh, like other people like are putting this on me, and like, you know, putting this pressure, and like are not willing to look inside of themselves, like, oh, why does this make me so uncomfortable?
Right. No, and it's true, because I think for me, ultimately, at the end of the day, I truly believe that everyone deserves to feel like themselves. Everyone deserves to show up and live this life authentically. And who am I to say that what makes you feel uncomfortable is not right? Like, I would never want to say that. So I will do whatever I can to readjust my language to make someone feel comfortable. And I do see the validity in that, because I've traveled and I see it all over the world, right? It's not
well,
new.
And I think this is like also, I feel like that's why we're this way, and like we are very eager to keep learning and unlearning, because we do go out and meet these people, because I think the most opinionated people about groups of people are people who don't know people in these groups of people, you know, if you're still following.
It's like what you said. I think a lot of times, for example, my parents are they shut down anything that has to do with LGBTQ+. But in my first question is, how many LGBTQ people do you know? How many trans people have you met and sat and had a genuine conversation with? How many non-binary people have you sat down and had a heart-to-heart with? Because I guarantee you, if you did, you would find something that is common ground. You would find that you are more alike than you are different. And maybe then you would change your heart on it. And I feel like that is my biggest thing with all the hatred that's going around. I'm like, you're not even giving people a chance.
No. And like, you know, I also understand, like, I once also had these thoughts, because that's kind of like how it's portrayed, and like, especially if you don't know things that you don't know are threatening, you know, because it threatens your worldview, like it makes you question things.
No, absolutely.
And so I also feel like I'm not better or anything. It's just I went out and sought out these connections, and I'm like willing to be wrong, and I'm willing to learn and you know, like get to know people, and then they're human beings, you know, and like we have a lot of things in common, more so I think than things that divide us, you know.
No, absolutely.
Well, I think also we can celebrate the diversity, you know. We shouldn't erase and like I don't see color and all that kind of stuff, you know. But I think it's just very beautiful when we come from this place of like love and connection, and we, you know, genuinely learn from each other, and like we're open to each other's worldviews. And it's also okay to agree to disagree, I guess. Yeah. Unless it's maybe like about human rights.
Yeah. We're like, we can disagree on coffee orders, but not human rights.
Not in like hierarchical kind of ways.
Right.
And, you know, there's definitely some things.
Where, you know, there might be people listening in who are finding a lot of relatability with this topic. Is if someone has is recently going through maybe finding a new gender expression for themselves, and they find that they are, you know, being misgendered, or maybe people are using their wrong pronouns, what is a way that you would say that they could navigate that and feel more at peace with it?
Yeah, I think that's still something I struggle with, because I guess speaking up for other people is a lot easier for me than speaking up for myself. So, you know, if like some of my friends are misgendered, or, you know, the wrong pronouns are used, I'm like, no, it's like, you know, I get like...
I get defensive, like protective, I
but
guess.
Then if it's with myself, I'm like, you know, sometimes I'm like, oh, it's okay. But it's okay, fine, whatever.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and sometimes, you know, I do feel like it's beautiful to direct people sometimes into some sources, you know. Sometimes people are like, oh, I don't understand. And, you know, there's actually this pronouns tool that I was a part of, like it's a Dutch website, but they also have it in English. And it's literally a website to practice with pronouns. There's like some different like quizzes kind of, and you get introduced to people, and then you're kind of like, oh, what pronouns do you use? And like, it's a really fun, informal way of practicing pronouns.
I think that's really good, because I feel like sometimes people might even be allies, and they have been introduced into someone they love and care about who is now going through this journey, and they want to learn. So I think that's a great. I'm gonna ask you that website. We'll add it to the bottom. We'll link it. Absolutely.
Because I do feel like in the end it should be. Ideally, well, I think should is a strong word, but like I think I would love it if people take it upon themselves to learn about pronouns. Maybe. Like, and not the people who have different pronouns than the norm, that they have to be the ones educating, you know.
Absolutely, because I think sometimes it gets tiring. It's exhausting.
And also, practice makes perfect. And, you know, especially when you do make mistakes, like, don't make it a whole thing. Just correct yourself and move on. Because it's also a little bit uncomfortable for a person who uses, for example, they, them pronouns, you know, and then it's like, oh, she, her, they, them, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And then, like, for me, it kind of feels like then I'm put in a position of like comforting you, but at the same time I'm uncomfortable, you know. But if someone's like, them, like we can just move on. I'm kind of like, oh, you got it. Like you caught it yourself, and you know,
it's more of ending, correcting the mistake with a positive than correcting the mistake with a negative, and it makes everybody
and like you know, your
uncomfortable.
feelings. Of course, you may feel a little shitty, but like you don't have to make that, you know, like it's a little uncomfortable. And there's the chat, and then the other person feels like, oh, now I need to say
we have to
that
talk about it.
Right, or like now I have to like, you know, affirm, like validate you, like, no, it's okay, we all make mistakes. It's like, I don't know.
That's a very, very good point.
And we are human, like we do make mistakes. I'm like, I can be such a perfectionist, but I also realize that's such a colonialist kind of thing, and I really don't want to be doing that anymore. So like now I'm kind of like, oh, look at me, I'm fumbling, I'm so human today.
That's cute. I love that, and I think it takes the shame away from it as well. Right? I think that's really important. I think you've always been teaching me as well about the different hierarchies of relationships, what love looks like, how that is perceived to be different per person. You were in a relationship, a monogamous relationship for 8.5 years, correct? And then now that you are starting to express yourself more in different ways and kind of unpeeling those layers, you identify into more of polyamorous life, right? What does that look like? What was that evolution for you, if you're okay with talking about it? And I would love to hear the journey.
So my long-term ex was a woman, and I guess in a way I already felt like, because we were I guess at the time I identified as a woman in a relationship, or being perceived as two women in a relationship, I think it already made us question a bit more, like, I think in heteronormative monogamy, you kind of have this whole escalator with steps, you know, like, oh, you date, then you move in, then, you know, you buy a house or you get married and get kids, that kind of stuff, you know. And I felt like already being a queer relationship, I was kind of like, oh, we can do things the way we want to do things. Right. And I also feel like people asked us a little bit less questions about like, oh, when will you have kids? Because I guess they could also see like, oh, this will not naturally just casually
no
happen.
Accidents there. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so I think in that way, and like we also both have parents who got divorced because like one of them was unfaithful to the other. And so we both also were like, you know, sure, you can fall in love with someone else. Like, but if it does happen, like, let's just have a conversation about it. So I think there was always, in a way, it was definitely monogamous, but there was definitely this kind of openness to it, like where it was not like this kind of like toxic compulsory monogamy. It's like, this is what it is. Like it was like a choice, you know, like we feel comfortable with this, but also if it ever changes, let's open up a conversation about it.
The foundation of communication.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
And like we were long distance for a while, and I also said, you know, like, oh, once I've had a drink, like sometimes I like kissing people. Like, would you be okay with that? Like, because I think I would love to have that kind of freedom.
Sure.
And so, you know, there was a kind of openness to it. Okay. And like when we were traveling at some point, like we met out with some other people, like casually. And, you know, that always felt like that was okay, you know, because we were also like, we have a very good foundation, and, you know, from there, you know, we can see. So also towards the end, I guess that's kind of like a little bit, sometimes it's like towards the end we were open, but we did have conversations, because I guess I was the first person with a vulva that she was with. So and at some point she was like, oh, I think I would love to have a bit more experience. I was like, oh my God, yes, I would love for you to have more experience too. I could also see the benefit of it, you know, and I don't want to hold you back.
Yes.
From because I guess also in my mind, like the idea of then, because we had plans to get married, and I was like, oh, the idea of just being intimate with you the rest of my life. Not that there was anything wrong, like great intimacy, but you know, that kind of thought was kind of strange to me.
Yeah, right.
So I guess I always thought, you know, I know you can love more people. You know, like I have 3 siblings, I love them all, like in different ways, but like not more than the other or whatsoever.
Yes, right.
You know, you know, just like as you love both parents, you know, or like
And so I feel like, you
friends,
know, relationships are, it's still a person, right? And relationships can look so different from person to person.
Yes.
With polyamory, I think that it's really important that there is that foundation of communication, because I think there's ethical and non-ethical relationships, whether you're monogamous or not.
Absolutely.
I would love to learn about what ethical polyamory means to you, and how are there ways that you make sure that trust is always being followed as well.
Right. Yeah. So I think, after the breakup, which was like almost like 2.5 years ago, I realized that like I wanted to explore like non-monogamy, because I had spent also some time with myself, and I also realized that I had a kind of a hard time being with myself and being alone. Like there's definitely this whole, like I can have this very overwhelming feeling of being super lonely. And then I also realized like I always considered myself such a relationship person, but I also felt like there was from a little bit of like lack and a little bit of a void in me that I kind of like, I need another person, this whole idea of like, you know, like your other half, you know, as if you're half a person and like you need something to complete you. And then at some point, like I took some months to myself and really did some real hard work, like internally and like, you know, sitting with all my feelings. And then from that moment, I kind of realized like, oh, I'm a person as a whole, but like, I do think there could be something that complements my life.
Not necessarily fulfills every part of your happiness.
No,
or
but
also
it can
as a codependency.
You know?
Because I think that is, and it's something that a lot of, well, I guess a lot of sapphic relationships go through this as well, but all relationships can, where a codependency starts to happen, and
well, especially if you like start working together and like you start traveling together, and like you're just each other's like everything, like and you know, in a way we still had our own things, and you know, we definitely put in an effort to do that, but I realized like that's not something I want to fall into. And so in a way I was also kind of like, oh, polyamory seems like a very good way to challenge myself, of being my own primary partner.
Okay.
Like me relying on me, because like you can't just lose yourself in someone if that someone is going to be with another partner.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah.
So in a way, it was also kind of like I was really on this whole growth kind of kick. Go.
Right.
Like, you know, I was just like, okay, I want to challenge myself and I want to see if I can do this. Because before I thought I couldn't do it, because I think also have attachment style, like fear of abandonment, like there's just, my whole nervous system gets activated at times and I start to feel a little cray-cray.
Yeah, you're like bolt. Well, I was curious what your opinion is on, and again, this isn't speaking for everybody, but your personal opinion. Would you say that polyamory is something that is like a natural inclination, like something you're born with, that you relate to, or is it something that we've learned through societal norms, like that we have taught ourselves that we have to only be with one other person?
Yeah.
And that is the patriarchy in whichever way that you want to. Or do you think that humans naturally are more polyamorous? I'm just curious what your thought is on that.
I do think, well, I don't want to speak for all humans, but I do think like monogamy is definitely something that was like introduced to humans and like was kind of invented. I think like in history, there's just so much more evidence of there being a lot more free and open love. Because, and again, like parents have more kids, they love all their kids. Like I know that love is abundant, and you know, it doesn't, if you love one person, it doesn't take away anything from the other person. You know, people have more friends. And so I do believe that if more people would allow themselves to free themselves of that box, that there could be a lot more. But you know, it's also a lot of work and like
cool.
And it's not for everyone. And I'm not saying like I'm gonna be polyamorous the rest of my life, you know, because I didn't feel trapped in monogamy. But I do think I want a conscious relationship regardless.
Well, you know, you had mentioned with the ethical side of things is like you can still there's cheating that happens. There's still betrayal that happens. There's still manipulation that could happen. It's the same as a monogamous relationship, but I think in polyamorous relationships, what I really love about it is there's such a huge foundation of communication from the beginning because
I do have to say there are people who call themselves like polyamorous, and then it's also kind of a way to avoid commitment and you know, which
or accountability sometimes.
Exactly. And that's kind of like, I do want to make it clear, because sometimes polyamory gets a bad rap, but like that's not what I think polyamory is about, you know. But it does require, and like some people are like, I don't think I could do it, and sometimes I'm like, I don't think you could do it either, because it requires a lot of skills, a lot of growth, a lot of looking inward. That's something I've realized. Oh, I have some parts of me that I didn't really want to look at, but also like, okay, I guess I'll go like welcome this dark side, like shadow part of myself, and like give it a hug and like whatever, I like validate that it's allowed to be there. Because also first I was like, you know, I can do it because I'm too jealous. I'm like, no, that's not the point, you know. Like, it's okay to sit with your jealousy and also be like, jealousy can be such a great teacher. I'm like, okay, where does this jealousy come from? Is it something like, is a need of mine like unmet? How can I then meet that? You know, is it not being met by this person? Can I have it met by another person? Is there something I could do within me to get that need fulfilled? You know, and sometimes it's also like, oh, like a metamor who's like a partner of your partner, maybe gets to do something with your partner that you wanted to do. And I'm kind of like, oh, like I don't have to resent you for it, but like I can also now raise this topic like, hey, that's actually something I'm curious about doing that with you, you know?
Yeah.
So like it can just open up conversation if you lead with curiosity, where you're just kind of like, oh, hey, what is this? Where's this coming from? Not just like, oh my God, I'm jealous. Oh no, I need to, and like be freaked out about it. But it's kind of like, oh, hey, jealousy, what's up with you? Like,
and again, it's kind of what we've talked about in all the topics so far is like leading your life with more curiosity than shame, or feeling like, oh, I'm curious about this, I have to shut it down because it's not normal.
Yeah.
When realistically it is normal. It is all of these things are normal to be curious about. What is something that I'm interested in? What is something that I'm not? How do I want to pursue exploring this? Do I not? Do I want to unpeel these layers? Do I not?
Right.
I think it's fascinating because it's just they all go hand in hand, and especially with love and relationships and sex and intimacy, right? No, I love that. And something that you introduced me to, and I want to put it up on the video, is the smorgasbord of relationships. And how it basically talks about how people it's hard for one person to fulfill all the different things in your life that
Right.
you're looking for, whether that be companionship, whether that be intimacy, whether that be friendship, right? So
Right.
a lot of times, and this is something that I am very interested in because I'm a serial monogamous. Like I love being in a long-term committed relationship, but it's hard sometimes to expect one person to fulfill all the things
Right.
that you
It's
need.
also the question if that's like healthy or if that's
Right.
desirable, you
Right.
know, or if someone does, you know, is that the only person who fulfills these needs, you know,
Yeah.
because like that's something I realized. I put my eggs in one basket for a long time. And then when that fell away, like a lot of my support fell away because, you know, that person was everything, you know. Then I realized, oh, you know, like it would be beautiful if I have more friendships and more people to go. I think it's also, it's a gift to everyone like you're in relationship with, what kind of relationship it is, when you know, I don't know if you feel that too, like sometimes you have those friends that feel like you're their only anchor and they're just like hang on to you and like they grab, and you feel this obligation because you know like, oh, if not me, like there's no one.
Right.
And so I believe if everyone has a broader network of people to go to and like have different needs fulfilled, and also maybe do fulfill some needs yourself, because I do feel like a lot of people like search outward and like instead of going inward. But I do feel like when there's a kind of desperation, you know, it creates this kind of dynamic of like, oh, I have to. And I'm like, oh, it's uncomfortable.
Well, it's also, I feel like desperation, which we all go through it, is also like, where is that coming from?
Well,
where is that stemming from?
I think it's from this place of like scarcity, you know, and this whole like, oh, you know, there's not enough. There's, you know, how many people like don't dare to break up because they are like, you know, oh, this is probably the only person who will ever. But I'm like, no, there's love and abundance everywhere, you know. But like, you have to dare to step into that. And like, I mean, this is a whole thing, because I was definitely in that whole mindset of scarcity, and like, you know, at some point I was definitely also of the place of like loneliness and like isolation, and you know, that's just where a lot of that dark stuff, I guess, comes in.
Yeah.
But you know, like, and then I don't know, finding your way through it and like through the darkness, and then getting to the place of love and abundance is just a beautiful thing.
It is. It's beautiful because we're surrounded by love and abundance.
Yeah,
everywhere.
But it's
you
so
look.
strange because like I've definitely been like seemingly in similar places, but then experiencing such a different way. There's just like, I've definitely been in that whole survival mode and like kind of like almost burnout, where I was not tapped into any love and abundance. Like at some point I got a question from my partner at the time, like, hey, do you still enjoy life? And I was like, oh,
and it's hard when you don't have answers for that. It's like, whoa, that's bigger, that's loaded. It's like, now I have to unpack that.
Right. Yeah. And I was just in this go, 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 and like, you know, disembodied, you know, I was just not in touch with my body. I remember sitting at a therapist and she was like, you know, where do you feel that in your body? I was like, what?
Yeah.
No,
everywhere.
I'm up here in my head.
Yeah.
I'm good over there. Like this feels safe. This is good. This is rational.
No, it's crazy though. I mean, I think, you know, a lot of people, I feel like all of this is so relatable in so many different ways, because I think a lot of this is where people misunderstand all of these different things, whether it's queerness, whether it's gender expression, whether it's polyamory, whether it's putting people in a box and expecting them to do a certain thing and act a certain way. It's all lined up in the same way. And I feel like in a lot of ways, it's just allowing ourselves to really just digest what that means for us.
Right.
And like you said, giving yourself grace while you figure out what that means for you.
And it's also, I understand, you know, when I was in that place of scarcity and stuff, like people could have said anything to me, but I wouldn't have believed them. You know? And you could say like, there's love and abundance. I'm like, sure. Like, I don't feel it right now. Where is it? You know?
Yeah. Well, I know that the next part that I'm really fascinated that, you know, you've been unpeeling another layer, and maybe this has always been there, but something that I've seen that you're expressive more of is kink culture, like being more and tapped into your intimacy and what that means for you and what kink means to you. I'd love to hear about how you became into that journey. Is that something new? Has that always been there? Let's hear it all. Give me the tea. Give me the tea.
Yeah, so I think in a way, I feel like I've always been kind of like a sexual person. Like as soon as I have like an emotional connection with someone, like sometimes I definitely feel like, am I asexual? I guess demisexuality is falls under the asexual umbrella, because you don't always feel that physical attraction.
Fascinating. Okay.
Yeah, but then, you know, once I do feel comfortable with someone and I have this bond, you know, like there's
You're like, rare.
You're like, I have a Leo Mars.
You're like, get me out of here. That's
no,
funny.
but then I guess as soon as I started peeling back more layers and like I felt more liberated and feeling better in my body, I think this whole idea of like eros, it's like kind of like a erotic like power that you have, like sensuality and stuff. I do feel like I tapped a bit more into that, and where I also realized that I am allowed to be this sensual human being, and I feel like there was still parts that kind of felt like shame around it, where you should do certain things in a certain way or something. And like I don't think. At the same time, I also feel like I don't find a lot of things weird, and I don't even know if I consider myself so kinky. But then I did have a partner who was like, "Oh, you're freaky," and I was like, "Wait, am I? I don't know." I think like I
love this topic with you because some people, I mean, I hope you don't mind me sharing and we can edit it out, but some people don't know that we went to a kink club together. In Berlin. How many years ago was that? But we did like a whole conference, and then we were like, should we go shopping and go to the kink club tonight?
I feel like isn't that the point where we started liking each other?
Yeah. I was like, I'm into this. Should we go get like pretty much naked? We were like in full leather.
Yeah, we
tassels,
had like harnesses. Yes,
and we walked into this nightclub, and I was like, whoa, this is a whole community.
For me, that was, I think, the kind of awakening where I was kind of like I also love watching people. I guess I'm a bit of a voyeur,
I mean, me too. I was like,
yes,
whoa, this is insane. Yeah. And I feel like, what I loved about that night was we were with a big group, and all of us were just such a community about it. There was no shame. There was no, we were just all each other's cheerleader in whatever kink that might have been.
Right.
And I feel like, I think that was liberating in itself because there was no aspect of shame. There was no aspect of you shouldn't like this. That makes you weird.
Exactly.
It was like we're celebrating this side of ourselves, this eroticism.
Right.
When even for me as a queer woman, as a lesbian, even the word lesbian feels eroticized in a dirtier way. Like we've been taught that it's dirty. Being a lesbian or a queer person, there's a lot of eroticism attached to it. As soon as you come out, they're like, oh, well, sex. And I'm like, why are we always making it a bad thing? Like, there's a lot of beauty and love in intimacy and like whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was one of those nights where I was like, wow, this is really beautiful. We're all like hugging each other half naked.
Oh my God, it was so beautiful. And I think that's also, so we were at Kit Kat Club in Berlin. And so it was a queer event, like a lot of queer guys.
Yeah.
And I think that's another thing. Like I always heard stories from my gay guys about like going to dark rooms and like having a lot of fun in there like with whoever, and like that always fascinated me, and I was kind of like, why isn't there stuff like that for like lesbians? And like because also gay men go to the gay sauna just to cruising spots, like it's such a fascinating thing to me. And then at the same time I'm like I guess there's like swingers clubs and whatever for also straight people, but I think for us, like being in a queer space with queer people, I felt very safe.
Yeah.
Because I do feel that, as soon as it's a space with cishet men, there's this, there's some trauma with me as well, but like there's a feeling of unsafety,
There's a sense of predatoriness. And there can be. It's not always, but even in there's queer bars here in West Hollywood that I've been to, that are supposed to be queer safe spaces, but I've gone and there's been predatory situations that have happened where I was groped and harassed by straight men who were going to the queer bars knowing other queer women would be there, which is so twisted if you think about it. So I think that's also why that night being around so many safe people was just fascinating, and it allowed me to feel like I could unlayer certain parts of myself and be like, oh, I'm really into this, like it's really exciting, and explore that in such a safe space, which is really nice.
Because that's also the thing with kink, like it had like scared me before in a way of like, I know, like, because it can be a place of great healing, but any place that can be a place of great healing can also be a re-traumatizing event, so I was like, I need to be very mindful of this, because like I'm very protective of me, which I love, but like I don't want to put myself in these dangerous situations, so while I'm like very excited to explore all of this, like I'm definitely doing baby steps because that feels good for me right now. I'm also learning to be a lot more in touch with my intuition and like with energies. Like I'm just so sensitive. I feel a lot. So as soon as I enter space, I can just feel like if it's a no for me.
Right.
And like sometimes I'm like, oh, is this my intuition or is it my trauma? I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like a no in my body is a no for now. Like I can unpack the details later.
Sure.
I can work on that later. But like if it doesn't feel safe, like I don't want to be there, you know?
You're like, I'm out.
Because I used to like, I still sometimes definitely push I do like to push myself out of my comfort zone and to explore, but like it shouldn't go like
to the extreme of putting yourself in a dangerous headspace.
Right, and like getting all dysregulated and like then feeling unsafe. And because I know when I feel dysregulated and unsafe, like sometimes I have this tendency to freeze and let things happen. And I'm like, especially in these kind of places, that's not what you. And like I do realize in some of the beautiful, also queer-centered spaces, kink spaces that I've been in, like there's so much attention for like consent, you know, there's so much, I guess, of course, sure, you can find creeps and like also people reclaim the word creep, you know, or whatever that means, because what do words even mean, you know, but, you know, or pervert or whatever. But I do feel like, that I've been in some really beautiful space that just changed my mind about the whole thing.
One of the things that is a misunderstanding around kink culture or BDSM or whatever that might be is, in my opinion, there's a lot of psychology attached to it, right? Well, sex in general, intimacy in general is psychological. But what I enjoy so much about that community specifically is there's got to be a lot of trust, communication, respect, boundaries, and that has to be something that is brought forth first to make people feel safe.
I knew what it looked like and I was like, oh, I'm too sensitive, you know, like I'm not that much into pain or, you know, but then realizing being in certain situations and then realizing how it feels more than what it looks like, you know, and especially that trust. And like, you know, I remember the first time being tied, you know, with rope, like shibari. First I was like, oh no, I don't want to be tied because I'm ADHD and like I would feel super restricted and like, oh no, I don't want to do it. But I did it with someone who I trusted and like, I just felt their care for me. Like, and as soon as they, you know, tied me, like I felt so held and loved, and that was I could just surrender for a moment. I was like, and I can trust you to, you know, care for me and like have my best interests at heart, you know. And so also when I tie people, I'm like, I don't take that lightly. Sometimes people are kind of like joking about it, you know, and it can be very playful, but like for me it's like, no, you're giving me a big responsibility right now, and like I want to take that on, you know, like I tied someone who was like, you know, oh, you can do anything with me. I'm like, I will not do anything with you right now because like you're in a very vulnerable place. And it's a lot of responsibility for my part.
Well,
you
it's
know?
similar to what you just said before, that you have to make sure you're in a safe space and you feel that. And I think sometimes we've all been there with a casual sex or a casual intimate situation where maybe we didn't feel comfortable, but we went with it anyways. And then afterwards, that is what carries on a lot of trauma or carries on a lot of shame. And so I think that the other way, you know, also you have to go through that and speak about it.
And
it's
also
vulnerable.
very beautiful because like sometimes people, like there's also a lot of traumatized people who are into kink because it's literally like they can recreate scenarios that were once traumatizing, but like they take their power back, you know, because like they're in control. It's also this whole misunderstanding, I guess, of, for example, like a dom and sub dynamic, as if the sub is like the dom can just do anything to the sub. No, I think it's usually the sub who has a lot of power, who is like, this is what I like, this is what I want you to do with me, you know, like, you know, this is what I trust you with, and then the other person, you know, gets to do that. And of course, like, hopefully it's a dynamic where both, you know, get something out of it, but it's not like just doing something to you, because like that's kind of, you know, where assault happens, you know, that's, you know, but like the healing side of things can be like, hey, like a good situation, you would like elaborately discuss a scene or like what you will do beforehand, you know, talk about the limits, talk about the boundaries, you know, talk about histories, you know, like it's not just something like, oh, haha, I'll just take out a fucker and like, you know, do things to you, you know, because that's like, unless maybe you've played together before and, you know, you have this understanding, like, I know what you like, because this is just, I think it can be very beautiful, like how intentional and like with how much consent and how, beautiful it can be, you know?
Well, I would imagine too, it's like healing in a lot of ways.
And empowering.
How is that something that's personal to you with your healing journey, with your journey of always going through this self-expression and trying to unpack those layers? has that been quite healing for you as well?
Yeah, I think especially tapping into like the dominant side. Like I definitely, as a kid, like there was like I would kind of boss my siblings around and make them do things for me.
Yeah.
And like at some point I was also, they were kind of like, you know, that's not okay. Like, don't you have like legs and arms to do things yourself? And like, you know, and I was just kind of like, oh, I guess that's not okay. And like now I meet people who are like, oh, I want you to do all those things. And I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And so like it was this whole thing that I was kind of like unlearning, and now I'm kind of like, you know, I do have this, I guess, like natural tendency maybe to have that side.
Sure.
And then people welcome it and being like, oh, this is what I love, which I still sometimes struggle with, because it's still like I have these parts that I feel like, oh, am I really allowed to? Like, is it okay?
Yeah.
You know?
It's a societal thing that you're taught that this is not okay, but you unpacking those and putting yourself in situations where you're allowed to explore that and explore that is okay, but in certain situations, right? Oh, that's fascinating. And I love too about all of this is the mental health aspect of just a liberation. It's just every single piece of who you are radiates liberation. And I feel like that is something that you're inspiring to me for that. If somebody was going through a similar journey of any of this, you know, some practices that you would say on any of the topics that we talked about, really prioritizing their mental health.
Well, for me, it's definitely like get a good support network, because like nothing ever good happens in isolation, I think. When you isolate yourself, you spiral down, you know, like I've definitely had moments of like solitude, I think, where I was definitely like, I love sitting with myself and like, you know, well, not always.
Yeah.
There's some parts of me that, ow.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But I do think for me, like slowing down really helped, like checking in more with myself, being like finding these environments that feel really good. It's something that's, I guess, what like intuition is. Like you cannot really explain, but it just feels good. And not just in a, oh, dopamine good. Having a therapist, you know, like moving my body, like I've just been doing a lot of work, like also somatically, you know, I started doing more yoga, meditation, and it's so funny because like just before I got my ADHD diagnosed, like everyone was like, oh, it just seems like everything is a bit much. You should just slow down. But I was just like, ooh, in this whole like, and I was like, I could not stop. But like, you know, gradually I did realize, okay, I need to go to therapy. Like I want to start like connecting more with my body, you know, like at some point, like I was crashing and burning, and I was like, this is not, I cannot keep going.
I relate to you so much in a lot of things you said. I also have a very deep fear of abandonment, and that a lot of that stems from like my family, my childhood. I was exposed to abandonment over and over again from multiple people of my life. And I think that that's carried throughout my life in waves of deep loneliness. That's never, it's been very difficult to, one, address it, but also two, learn how to cope with it. Because a lot of times I'm an avoidant attachment. So when I start to feel lonely, I bolt, I'm out. Like I'm very easy to cut off family. Like I don't have a relationship with my parents. I don't have a relationship with a lot of my family. Past friends that have harmed me in certain ways, I immediately cut off and I run. And we've talked about this too,
you,
right?
Yeah, you're like,
travel,
I don't want to be risking this. Like, hurt. And
I think that that's something that I'm really just trying to sit with, because I think for me, anytime I've felt lonely, I ran. And I think that's something that I'm really trying to, because I'm also ADHD. So if some days I'm like, let me try new projects and I'll do something different. Let me move to Asia. Like, you know, and I think
more dopamine over here.
And so I think for me, it's what you're saying is trying to sit with the uncomfortability, trying to sit with the discomfort of what loneliness is, because I think we all go through waves of loneliness and trying to figure out what that means for us. And I think knowing that other people are struggling with loneliness, even though we're surrounded by people.
Right. That's sometimes when I felt the most lonely. Like I just felt so like, I was on this other layer of like other frequency. Like I could see other people having fun and enjoying life, and I was like, I can't get there. I don't know like how.
Or it was masking. For me, I looked on the outside like I was the happiest, most go-lucky person, and I pour a lot of my love into others because a lot of times I don't feel love myself, and that's from my own, not from people who love me, because people show me love all the time. But I think it was myself, like not pouring love into myself, where it was really difficult. I'm trying to get better at that. It's a work in progress for sure.
It is.
It's baby steps. I'd love to chat with you a little bit before we're running out of time, because I could keep doing this over and over. I could keep talking to you all day long. Something that I love so much about you is your creativity, and something that you do very authentically is showing up truly who you are in your storytelling, in content, in photography, in writing. And then also I want to learn about your coaching as well, but photography first.
Yeah, so photography has always been there. So it also, I was a little bit afraid of making it my work, like my job, like my income, because I was like, what if I then all of a sudden lose the interest or something, you know, or what if it becomes like kind of a, you know, I have to, you know, and, but yeah, ever since like I was a teenager, I used to do like photo shoots with like my siblings and with my best friend. And when I started traveling, I traveled with a friend one summer and her family. And like, I just started capturing everything, like the way I saw it. And then sometimes people are like, oh, like you have a good eye, like interesting perspective. I'm like, I don't know. I just capture like how I see things. When I started traveling with my partner at the time, like I just started documenting like on the daily, you know. So that's, I feel like, because I'm completely self-taught. I have not done an education, again, because I was worried like if I will do an education and there's all these rules again, or like, and then people are gonna like judge my work. They're gonna give grades to creative work, which I feel a little weird about, because I feel like it's such a individual, like personal process, like, and it's such a preference. Like, also, again, I've not done the education, so this may also, I may have an opinion of something that I don't really know, you know. Yeah, and so like gradually, like I started doing more travel photography, and then also like capturing my girlfriend at the time, and make this whole, like, I do feel my imagery is pretty like dreamy. I definitely, I'm such a eternal optimist. Like sometimes it's a little toxic maybe, but I'm like just bypassing like
everything's
some
good,
of my feelings.
everything's good.
Right. But I'm like, I would love to, you know, the world can be such a awful place, especially like if you look at the legislation, if you like, as soon as you go out into the world, like there's also so much beauty there, you know, and that's, I think, something that I would love to capture. Yeah, all the love and abundance that's there, I guess, in a way. And so I did a lot of travel photography, and then at some point we started doing some press trips, and I got asked to be the photographer of a press trip. Like I was asked to photograph like some weddings, like destination weddings. And then I also realized, wow, I love capturing people. Like I think for me, like travel, I'm not a studio photographer, because that doesn't really spark I'm not someone who creates like, I don't think of things. I love capturing what is, and like seeing what is, and then like being there and like got it. So that's also why I love photographing weddings. You know, it's just a day where everyone's so radiant, and like there's an abundance, I mean love again, like, and there's intimacy, and like I get to be a part of a family for a whole day. You know, it's beautiful to be invited in such a space, you know.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, and there's just energies to work with, you know. There's just
absolutely.
so much.
And I think you also do that with your writing too, because you wrote a book, The Pride Atlas. And I feel like you took because I know you didn't do all the photography, but you did write the book, and you took your love for travel and your eye and your vision for what the beauty of this world brings, and you put it into a book that helps LGBTQ plus travelers know where they can go
because
to and
I
travel
think there's
safely.
so much focus on like where it's unsafe for people, but I was also like, you know, there are places that are, I wouldn't say safe, but like safer than other places. You know, there are, you know, there's queer-owned businesses everywhere. Like, and I would love for everyone to support everything, you know? Like,
absolutely.
And I think that's very beautiful. Also, just giving people that hope, like there is community everywhere. Like I will go, even if you don't like completely see them, or if they're not visible, you know, but like they're there. Like that's how I feel when I go to queer places or queer-owned businesses and everywhere around the world. Like I do feel like it's family, you know? Because there's this understand what it's like to be a bit different in the society.
I mean, I think travel, I mean, there's still around 70-ish, maybe a little less countries where it's illegal to identify as part of the LGBTQ plus community. But every one of those countries that I've been to where there are laws restricting people, there's queer people that live there. There's queer people that exist there.
And then again, we also, like, we come from Western countries, and we have this whole, like, also still partially colonized, you know, mindset. So we also have this idea of, like, oh, this is even what it looks like. Because I remember also traveling to a lot of countries where, for example, like, a lot of women and a lot of men, like, walked hand in hand or, like, arm in arm, you know, where it was so much normal. Because, like, PDA is such a different
like
thing,
physical
you know?
touch is different.
So I was like, also, let me just be open and curious about like, how people just live here. And like, because all these things of like, oh, this may be illegal. It's like, but what is, you know, like, what does that look like?
Yeah.
And just letting go of your own.
There's so many nuances to every single destination, place, people, person, thing. It is. There's so much nuance.
And we have this
to the
framework
world, right?
that like we have to step out of in order to kind of like see the truth, I guess, you know, instead of like, I mean, I guess we will always see our truth because we always come in with our own. But like the more, I guess, you can let go of things, the more I think you can be open to seeing how different life can be, and how we may think like, oh, you don't have those rights, you must be miserable. But then, you know, you go out there and you meet like thriving queer people there, and you're kind of like, oh, you have to let go of some like prejudice. you know?
No, absolutely. No, I love that. And one of the last, you know, questions that I want to ask you about quickly, because I know you're going into coaching.
Yes.
What does that look like? And at the end, we'll ask where they can follow you on all of that. But what does the coaching journey look like, and what will you be coaching? Yeah.
I think even my therapist thought it was a good idea.
Okay.
Like,
that's how you know it's a good idea.
But I feel like in a way with photography, especially when I photograph people, like it already feels like kind of a coaching session sometimes.
Sure.
I'm like, I love to empower people and like, you know, let them create a safe space where they can fully be authentically themselves. And like, you know, so oftentimes when I photograph people, you know, they come in and like, oh, I'm uncomfortable in front of the camera. And then later they're like, oh my God,
empowered.
like I see myself, you know, like you captured me like the way I feel I am, you know, like I've not seen that before, you know, which I just think is really beautiful. I think that's one of the things I really want to do, empower people, especially queer people.
Right.
And I do feel like also through a lot of lived experience, like I just, you know, fumble through everything. But
I think, you know, it's interesting that you say you fumble through it, but to me, you're like a trailblazer. I think you're the one that's kind of creating and uncreating these rules for everybody, which I think is really beautiful. So
well, I guess you just have to like trip and fall and like, oh, and this is like, because it's funny because when people also say like baby steps, you kind of imagine like very cute little like, you know, but no, have you seen babies walk? They're just like clumsy and like boom, and then they fall. And, like, it's just like baby steps are very uncomfortable.
Yeah, they're like little drunk little babies. They're drunk, like falling into stuff.
Weird. Yeah, exactly.
True.
I'm gonna start an education, like a year-long program, like very soon. I guess when this is out, like I'm already doing it.
Perfect. I love it.
And so that's just a very solid foundation of like being an all-round coach. I do think like I want to go into, well, definitely like queer identity, that kind of stuff. Relationships, intimacy. I realize intimacy and connection, that's really like some of my core values. And also in coaching, that's just what feels really connected to me.
Sure,
you know, like, getting vulnerable and open, and you know.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it, and I feel like you're going to be an amazing coach. I'm so excited.
Know,
you coach me every day, so I'm like, I'm already there. Sign me up, and let everyone know where they can follow you, how they can get in touch with you, where they can sign up. Well, I guess you'll find out with the coaching, but where they can get in touch with you so they can follow your journey, and then eventually sign up for the coaching as well.
All right. You can find me on Instagram on at Maartje Hensen. We're going to spell that out in like the the thing. And then my website is also maartjehensen.com. Yeah, I think also my Instagram has like link in bio, everything where you can find the book and the Pride Atlas.
Okay. Thank you so much for being a part of this. You're amazing. I love you so much. I love you.
I love you.
Oh my gosh. And that's a wrap on this episode of She Comes With Baggage. If you love this conversation, please make sure to follow She Comes With Baggage on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube for more content and behind-the-scenes moments. And if you're tuning in from Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any other audio platform, don't forget to leave a review. I love hearing from you. Your support helps keep these conversations going. And just remember, if you are carrying any baggage, you're not alone, and we're all more alike than we might realize. See you soon.